My name is Kerry, and this is my story. I have the somewhat unique perspective of being raised in this church from the time I was an infant. In fact, my grandparents started this church in 1962 across the street in the house that my sister still lives in. They hosted church in the living room, and they had Sunday school in the bedroom that was my mom's. If it takes a village to raise a kid, then this church has always been our village. I can't remember a time when somebody from church wasn't involved in every aspect of my life. I can remember being a kid sitting in the back where the kids are now with Judy Mincer, memorizing a Bible verse for each letter of the alphabet. I can't remember all of them still, but there are some I can still recall if needed. I actually had the privilege of calling Jason Warden not only my senior minister, but he was my youth minister when I was in middle and high school. So I've got to see both the child side of him and the adult side of him. Chase and I, when we got married in 2007, we couldn't think of anywhere else to have the wedding besides this church. It's where I've grown up. It's where everything important that's happened has happened for the most part. So this was a natural choice for our big day. And we had several members of the church that pitched in to help make everything special as it could be. Actually, I guess as a kid, I didn't really appreciate how strong a foundation this family has been for me until I went to college and tried to go to another church, and I couldn't find a church that even compared to this one. And so we did try a few churches, but really it was more of a come back on Sundays when I could visit with my church family. I really didn't understand as a kid how God was working to build this church family for me for a reason until I became an adult. In 2010, when my grandfather was diagnosed with cancer for the last time, the church really stepped up. People came and visited with him, they sat with him, they helped take him to treatment, they supported us as we were dealing with it. In fact, when he passed away, there were several people from the church that were present. This church came around us, they fed us, they took care of things for us, and it really, got us through that hard time. Then a few years later, when Chase and I decided we wanted to start a family, we had no idea that it was going to be a several year process. We lost 3 babies and struggled with infertility for many years. We didn't talk about it to anybody, but I had heard stories from other people in the church that had gone through the same thing, so we knew we weren't alone in the process, even though we weren't really sharing our story at the time. Shortly after my oldest was born, my mom was diagnosed with cancer. People came from all over the church. Several ladies in church would come and take mom's treatment on her days. They would come feed us. They would make sure that Hannah and I had what we needed to have. And a room full of family from this church in the hospital with us when we said goodbye to mom. Several people came, they fed us, they took care of us. There are still people that make sure that we are mothered well. Even though my mom's not around, we have plenty of substitute mothers in this church that make sure we do what we're supposed to do. In 2019, my dad suffered a nearly fatal heart attack. He was actually gone when we got there, but they brought him back. And while we were sitting in the ER waiting room, waiting to see what was going to happen, we were once again surrounded by people from this church. We had so many people, I can't even begin to tell you who all was there. Dad survived that heart attack, but he wasn't doing well. There were several men from this church that came and they started visiting Dad. If you knew my dad, he wasn't a very easy person to get to know. He wasn't exactly the most friendly person, but they saw through his prickly personality and they visited with him. They brought him communion, and before he passed, he actually renewed his faith. He hadn't been going to church for many years. Once his father died, I think he was angry. But these men from this church, they took the time to get to know him, and because of them, he was a believer when he passed. So that's a great comfort to us. Not only did this church once again step up to support us, but they also helped Dad in a way that we couldn't. So now we have the fortune of raising our children in this church. Abby and Harper have been here since they were born, and they have people in this church that they consider family as well. And I guess the point of what I'm trying to say is get to know the people around you. Don't ever underestimate your value as a member of this church, because there are people here that consider you family and that couldn't do the hard things of life without you.